What's going on, everybody? This is Mitch from RespectMyRegion.com, back with another episode of the RMR Podcast. Today, joined by special guest Warren Bobrow of Klaus. How we doing today, Warren?
I'm fantastic. Doing great over here in rainy New Jersey.
Rainy, and I feel like I discredited you. You know, there's only so many characters we can fit in the title, so I'm saying of Klaus, but you're a man of many travels, traits, hustles, and been held in high regard in Gnomes, held in high regard in a couple different areas, man. I mean, in your life, you've worked within the alcohol industry, mixologist, chef, writer, now cannabis industry entrepreneur. I feel like, there's very little you haven't seen or done, man.
Well, I failed at all of them except for the cannabis thing. This is success in small ways.
I don't know, man. I think, every time I talk to you, you have so much life, so much energy, and so much wisdom from your travels. So I'd say, at least from the outside looking in, it's hard to say you failed at anything, man.
Well, thank you. That gives me a good feeling inside. But I will tell you, with all honesty, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for doing less than perfectly.
I think that's like, a higher thing in life, right? We are like the sum, we're the sum of all parts, and that's the good things, the bad things, the mistakes, the successes. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of that to get to where we need to go.
Yeah, well, I haven't gotten it there yet, but I hopefully have a lot more time to try to find it.
I always say the Lamborghini's not in the driveway yet, but I close my eyes, I can see it, man. It's coming sometime. I'm not sure when. I kick off every episode with our guest origin story with cannabis. So I would love to know kind of when you got started with cannabis.
Gosh, it was a Grateful Dead concert, 1972, in Jersey City, Roosevelt Stadium. That ring a bell? And I went with people some of them are related to me. I won't mention any names. And someone passed me a joint, and it made me cough really badly. I'm sure it wasn't this less than quality, but fortunately, I had family who were in the creative business, I would say, out in Los Angeles, motion pictures mostly, and they always had very, very high quality weed. And that was back in the 1970s when no one had high quality weed, but it was coming down from Northern California, or if someone was lucky to go to Hawaii, and they were cool. They found stuff. You're young, you're open-minded. I smoked weed. I wasn't a big drinker. That wasn't my thing.
Well, and then that at some point that somewhat changed a little bit, right? Because you got into mixology, and I know you've traveled the globe, on that side of the industry.
Yeah, but cannabis wasn't legal, and here in New Jersey, there are a lot of stigmas, and even when it was illegal, which wasn't until very recently, the idea and the concept of being arrested for your craft is not something that I relished. So that's why I opened my business, doing Klaus in California, because these are not permitted in New Jersey. It's not part of the law. We have flower, we don't have beverages. And there's no edibles. So, I have to come out west for it. And I love to come out west, but there's a lot of expense in that. Got to be a rich man to travel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know you're waiting on the day to bring the brand back to the, the home state, not out there in the East, man.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I would love to do Massachusetts, and even though they have a 5 milligram limit, but still, there's a conversation to be had there. And then I was loving the idea of bringing it to Colorado, because Colorado, there's all sorts of interesting things, and regulations about it that I feel that we can fulfill. New Jersey's off the table. New York possibly doing something that's terpene forward, if not THC, but gives you the impression of having that feeling. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. What Klaus is not a seltzer. It's not one of those clear drinks with bubbles in it. This is a true craft cocktail, and I've created something that no one else has done, because there's no one else in the field who does what I do. I mean, I twist things up, and the drink is not 14 industrialized ingredients. It's 3 ingredients, and they're bartending ingredients, or culinary ingredients, and of course they're usable in a manufacturing standard, because we have food science. Food science is really important, and scalability is really important, and being the CEO of a company is really important, and have the gift of gab is really important, and getting out in front of people and meeting people like yourself and being really engaged about doing something that no one else has ever done, and doing it in a way that's successful and is passionate and makes me feel happy to be alive at 61 years old and to do what I love. I mean, that's totally where it's at. If I don't do this, I'm going to become, who knows, maybe a sculptor. Smoke a lot of weed.
So yeah, some form of creative outlet, I am sure. But yeah, I'm kind of curious you're the inspiration behind Klaus, because I know I tried it when you did, I think the launch at Hall of Flowers at Tran at the
David's
at the Zone,
at the Fairchild event at the Air Museum. Yeah.
Yep, at the Air Museum. Yep.
That was great. That was amazing. We got it in front of people who have never ever had a chance to taste it. They were incredible to us. I mean, David is I wrote about him when I wrote for Forbes, and I guess that opened up some doors. I don't know, but we were able to get Klaus into people's mouths, and they tried him, and you tried it, and it was something that really was invigorating, because the flavors at work here are not your normal fizzy water drinks or soda drinks, and the fact that it's only 0.6 grams of sugar should be really important to you. You're young yet, but when you get to be my age, you start looking at your sugar intake and you say, what's healthy for me? And 0.6 grams is not going to hurt you. And 16 calories. I mean, 16 calories. Who does a 16-calorie drink out there? Look at the calorie count. Take a look and see what you're drinking, and how it, how that Coca-Cola that you're having is 400 calories for 8 ounces. It's not helping you out. So we want to make something that's delicious, and I can't say it's nutritious, but I can just say it's really tasty.
It's not like you said, it's not leaning on that. And like for me, right, I'm not a calorie counter as a consumer, but I also don't drink soda. I haven't drank soda in well over a decade, just by choice. I stopped doing it, and I now just have no desire to do it. I'm not a seltzer drinker, really. I mean, I'll have one every now and then, but I'm one of those weird people that just likes like regular water. Like I enjoy it. Whereas
there's nothing wrong with it. But my idea of creating the mezrol, because there's a whole backstory and why it's called a mezrol. We could talk about that if you want. But the idea of why I created the drink was to make a twist on a drink that you would normally have with rum in it. And in this case, it would be a rum drink that would have an agricole, and an agricole rum would be from Martinique or from Guadeloupe, and it would be a French type of rum that's made from freshly pressed sugarcane juice that's not fermented and not boiled to make molasses, which is really poisonous stuff. And if you're drinking molasses rums, you should stop today and only drink fresh pressed stuff. But anyway, I digress. So this drink is meant to have rum in it. What we did is we put 10 milligrams of full spectrum terpene forward hippie crasher THC cannabis in the drink. So the flavor and the smell of the hippie crasher is really, it has a pungency to it. It has kind of like the baby skunk running outside the window right now, and this gassy pungency, which is really nice. And it is very pronounced, along with the Pickett's extra hot and spicy ginger syrup from Denver, which is made in a Great Britain style. And then I use a lime puree from France from a company called Les Vergers Boiron. And, it's called French, it's a French fruit puree with little tiny Caribbean limes, very intense, very potent limes, oily, delicious. And then the last ingredient is tangy, and it's mirin, which is Japanese rice vinegar, but we didn't use the sweet version. We used a dry version, so it's herbaceous and tangy and crisp and aromatic, and it works with the other 3 ingredients. And of course, the hippie crasher, which is a nanotechnology, which is from a company called Vertosa, which is in the San Francisco area, and they are class acts.
Yeah, that nanotech definitely helps when you come to beverages. So you speed up the activation time to where it's similar to enjoying a beverage rather than sip on it.
Well, the idea wasn't just to have a cannabis beverage. I mean, cannabis is a plus, and I love it. And I have a, almost 50-year history with cannabis. So no one could say I'm a Johnny come lately to the table. We wanted to have a drink that was as delicious as having a mixed drink, but without the hangover. I don't drink anymore. In July of 2018, down at Tales of the Cocktail, where I was doing a private event down in New Orleans during the Tales, and I took my last drink, and it was a Hemingway, and I love Hemingways, and I really wanted another Hemingway, but they just didn't taste right to me anymore. So I wanted to have create a beverage that was socially acceptable, that no one knows your business, that when you're drinking it, it's just as pleasurable as having any sort of canned beverage. Canned cocktails are super potent and super delicious, and they're all over the place right now, and they're making people all kinds of money. Why can't a THC, infused beverage like Klaus do, equally as well? Because it's delicious and tasty and, vibrant, and you'll never have a hangover from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the big thing, right? Like about cannabis beverages, there's this big talk, a lot of hype, a lot of articles are coming out about their place and some of the pros and the cons of them fitting into social situations. And I feel like you've done a good job, as you just explained, of some of the elements that have gone into this beverage, of making it not just fit in, from the way that it looks,
Right.
But from the way that it tastes, the way that you can enjoy it, the way that you can consume it, wanting a cocktail, but not wanting the alcohol.
I mean, the design is beautiful, and John Mammis, is brilliant in what he created here for me. But it's not going to fall prey to what we call pretty label syndrome. You go to a wine store and all the bottles are beautiful looking, but the wine's plunk. In this case, the beverage supersedes the beautiful label. It truly does. And everyone that tries it says the same thing. They say that I've ruined them for their bartender, which is what I anticipated having happen the first time. And the second time that they try it is like, wow, it really does smell like weed, but not in a bad way. It's like a perfectly cured cannabis flower that's been, aged beautifully and has just the right humidity. When you crack it open and you smell it, that's what you smell, along with that spicy ginger, the little touch of vinegar, and the lime. And that's all I wanted to do, is be simple and be perfect. And if I can't be perfect, tell me, and I'll want to make my next one better.
Yeah, and I remember trying it. I remember I was like, this isn't quite, but it gives me these elements of, like, I've become a kombucha drinker as of late because of a lot of those elements. You get something that's somewhat like a soda, but has these bright, natural type flavors to it.
And kombucha, again, with respect to kombucha and shrubs, those are fermented beverages. This, although it has vinegar, is not fermented.
Right.
And it's also shelf stable, which is something very important. I do stress that you should refrigerate it, because it just tastes even better refrigerated. But don't overload on the ice. You only need like 1 or 2 cubes, if that. And then the other thing is, make sure your ice doesn't taste like garlic from that pasta that's been lurking in the back of the refrigerator for 2 or 3 weeks. So, take good care of your ice, and your drinks will take care of you.
Hey,
ice is important.
That's sound advice. And so I know when you were pouring at the Hall of Flowers event, I believe you were actually using it to mix. So this is used because you can use this as a base for further cocktails, or just ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, I did that at the Hall of Flowers, the Fairchild event. That was just straight pours.
Okay.
I did another event at the Palm Springs Hall of Flowers that just took place a couple months ago, and I'm still working on some of the flowers from that. That one I did some live mixology with I did it with alcohol, and I did it without alcohol, because I wrote this little book here called Cannabis Cocktails, Mocktails, and Tonics. So I have permission to use alcohol when you mix in with, for the crossfade. But on the commercial market, no way. No way. I don't want to go to jail. Please be good to me.
That's a hot topic around cannabis beverages. So many people talk about replacing alcohol. I know you said you're not drinking it, so it replaces it. But for some of us that do enjoy alcohol, this is a weird taboo to even talk about. Some of us do enjoy a beer or a drink.
Yeah, well, I like liquor. A beer or a glass of wine. Don't get me wrong. And I also infuse things like chartreuse VEP and regular chartreuse for people. And I just don't have a taste for it anymore. It doesn't mean that I can't do it. It's just that it doesn't taste good to me anymore. It doesn't feel good. The buzz doesn't feel good. I don't, I don't think anyone could fault me for not drinking. I think, I could start drinking rum punches tomorrow with no detriment. The detriment was the nearly 75 pounds that I lost. The detriment was I couldn't put my feet in my shoes. The detriment was that I was working as a rum judge for the Ministry of Rum and Rum XP, and we were drinking 150 rums a day starting before 9 in the morning, and it was all day drinking. You can't do that and live. All my friends died. I lost a lot of friends who work in the liquor industry, and they were like myself. They were brand ambassadors. They were seeing the world. I've been all over the world for my craft, but it was going to kill me. And I had to do something else. And what was I going to do? I couldn't retire at 50. I didn't have any money. I was bankrupt. I had to do what I loved. I started writing. I went back to school. I got disowned. I was bankrupt. My wife left me. I lost my house. Every fucked up thing that could possibly happen to a person at 50 years old happened to me. And no one knows that. They all think whatever they think. But I didn't come out of nowhere. And this is all with struggle, and it's all with grief, and it's all with pain. And nothing came easily.
Absolutely. And the thing that I think no one knows about that, like something that the stuff that you've spoken about is how you found your calling late in life. You've said it's been I remember you saying that to me one time. Like, it was a blessing.
Hate the word, Mitch, I hate the word late in life. I hate the word late in life because this is where I'm at.
Sure.
I'm not late. I might be chronologically at a certain place, but late in life to me is like someone who's in their 70s. Now watch me in 10 years look back and say late in life for me is someone in their 80s. My grandmother lived to 105, and she looked great until the end. And we had a last drink together before the train left the station, and she drank Maker's Mark every day. And from her 100th birthday on, they sent her a bottle. So I knew it was important. So, because I wrote a book about whiskey, so I was pretty well known in whiskey. But, it's just a funny thing. You choose what you want to do, and you choose your vices. And my vice certainly was alcohol, but it didn't like me, and it didn't like what it did to my body. And, I had to get all new clothes, but I feel great. And that's really important. And what's up here is now clear, as opposed to before I was just dealing with drunks, you know? And when you're trying to do a business deal and everyone's drunk, you can't blame it on the alcohol because you have to blame it on the person. We don't, we have a lot of problems in cannabis, but we don't have drunks. They weed those out pretty fast. Yeah. So to speak.
Yeah. It's definitely hard to find.
I'm sorry for getting off on a tangent, but I feel very passionate about that. And, there's a progression and there's a path for everyone. And, I would have been content to be where I was. Everyone knows me in liquor. I mean, they'd love to have me back. They would ask me what was wrong. But, I was totally blackballed in the liquor industry because I went to work in cannabis. And it didn't leave a good flavor in my mouth about the people that I used to consider my friends. And those that I still do consider my friends are very careful about the associations that they make, especially if they still work in liquor, because cannabis is still a forbidden topic.
That's so interesting that, like we were just saying that cannabis, and like in the cannabis sector, you talk about, drinking, like even cannabis beverage, you talk about traditional alcohol mixed with THC beverages is this taboo people don't want to talk about. So it's interesting to hear on the other side that in the alcohol industry, that there's this shunning or the stigma against cannabis as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, I hated the occupational hazard. When I go down to New Orleans for a week, during Tales of the Cocktail, and there was a hangover every morning, or the people that I talked to would never believe it, and if they did believe it, they would never understand it, because the level of drinking that goes on is beyond anything that you can imagine. It's not just social drinking, it's business drinking, it's waking up and breakfast drinking, it's the nightcap at night, but I'd much rather talk about the things that make me happy. And like the people, where I was mentioning about Hall of Flowers and how they embraced my work. And I was fortunate to open up doors and introduce myself to people and get out of my comfort zone, where I really had to tell my story and make it into a real elevator pitch. And it led to meeting the Sands Lane people who really have been incredibly supportive of my craft. And I would never have been able to get this far without them. And things are gifted in life. And that's one of the things that I was gifted with, was someone to support me and my craft, and to recognize the fact that the drinks that I make are the best they've ever had. And I make no pretense. And I think I'm pretty soft spoken. I mean, the people I come across who are from the the bar world, they know everything about everything. And I'm happy to say that I know just a very tiny little bit and still am as good as I am. So I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I'm just lucky.
At what point, obviously, like you said, as being a cannabis consumer starting, a couple decades ago, and that not being a viable industry or career path, and then all of a sudden this career path unfolds itself in a way that wasn't around. What did it look like, and how long did it take you to be like, all right, I'm shifting to the cannabis industry because now it is an actual industry?
Well, it only happened like 3 years ago. I mean, that's it. 3 or 4 years ago, even though I wrote Cannabis Cocktails in 2015 and it wasn't released until 2016, still that it was illegal then, and it was forbidden. And I really had a lot of problems. I had a lot of financial problems. I had it was really to the detriment. It caused me to be disowned from my family, physically and emotionally and financially. I mean, who's ever had to deal with that? I don't know of anyone else. I only read about that stuff in books, but it happened to me too. And it's not fair. And, coming from an affluent, ultra high net worth background and being raised all over the world and never really been given the life skills that were necessary to become self-sufficient until I, worked in a bank and, for almost 20 years and paid attention to what was going on around me, whether I liked the job or not. But the fact was, I wasn't given the skills at home to know how to have a savings account, know about the value of compound interest, and know about how to run a checking account. I mean, how many kids know how to do that today? They don't. So this stuff is really, really important. But I wasn't given those skills because I didn't get cut off until I was almost 50 years old. So in a lot of ways, it was do or die. And I got a job as a barback because I wanted to write about the alcohol, the liquor industry from the inside out. And, so it was 2010. I needed a job. I went to see my friend I went to see my friend Anthony Bucco, who was just starting off as the executive chef at the Ryland Inn in White House, New Jersey, a 5-star restaurant. Incredible food. And I asked him for a job, but I didn't want to be a cook because I'd been through culinary school and that was just no place for me. I wanted to be out in front of people. So I went to see his head bartender, was a guy named Chris James, who's still my mentor to today. And I always thank him. He was the one who taught me to make a drink and speak to someone at the same time. It's quite an art. But once you can do that, you can do anything in life because you can show that you can do something with your hands and carry on a conversation without making mistakes. So Chris was really good to me and just taught me how to do that. And in a lot of ways, you could say it's like rolling a joint and having a conversation at the same time. I can't roll a joint, so I can make a drink and have a conversation. But I guess what we're trying to say is, you're only as good as the people who teach you. And in my case, I was given that opportunity and I put my head down and did a job of a, 17 or 18-year-old at 50 years old. And it was a great lesson. And 11 years later, I've learned something and it created something in the fire within because I didn't have anything. I didn't have rich parents to fall back on. My father was about to be dead, and my mom I haven't seen in 15 years. So there's gifts in life, and there's things that cause you pain, and there's things that make you cry, and there's things that you say it's not fair, but you're only as good as what you make yourself. And I've made something out of nothing. And anyone who wants to shoot me down, please go ahead, because I've written 6 books and I've heard it all before. And if you could write a book like Cannabis Cocktails when hardly anyone was even born, much less had smoked weed, I think that's a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your experience at making cocktails, and what kind of cannabis infusions were you doing in 2015 when
My
the
God.
nanotechnology wasn't quite a conversation yet?
Oh yeah. Well, as a chef, and I was trained as a saucier, so I knew a lot about double boilers. Making sauces. You don't want to curl those gentle, mother sauces. So I don't have a whole lot to say about culinary ingredients in my drinks, but I do have a lot to say about taking ingredients that you already know about. Things like my hoochie coochie man, which is essentially a mango lassi, and I took the rum out of well, you don't even need rum in it, but in the rum context, there would be like agricole rum or a light rum in it, and then I infuse the mango puree or even the Greek style yogurt with THC, and then just
Mm,
drink it on a blistering hot day. With the rum in it, it gives a unique experience, and it has a wonderful effect, and it's probably the best high I've ever had in my life. But I will tell you that it's not for everyone. And don't go to your bartender and say, I've got this tincture, will you put it in my mango lassi? That's probably not a good idea. But you can go to your Vietnamese restaurant and you can get a iced Vietnamese sugarcane juice, and in your pocket you have some condensed milk that's infused with THC and make something really delicious.
mm,
So that's kind of nice.
that looks crazy.
That is crazy nice. The drink that gets the most attention. I mean, there's lots of great drinks in this book. There's 75 drinks, but the drink that gets all the attention is the Vietnamese iced coffee with THC infused condensed milk.
Hmm.
That is the drink, because you can make this drink has 250 milligrams of THC in it. You can destroy yourself and all your neighbors.
Yeah, you get with the coffee, you get your day started and finished right there with one.
Right. Right. And if you really want to have fun, you could do something like a tea punch, which is loosely based on the Mesrol. And a tea punch is lime. It's lime puree, cane sugar syrup, and rum. And I have it with lime, ginger, the ginger shrub, which became the Mesrol, and then it has rum agricole and the cane sugar syrup, and it has about 250 milligrams in that tiny little glass.
Mm.
So it really does the job, and it's great on a hot day. Does not have any ice in it, no ice.
Huh. What are the elements, and this is probably vague, but what are some of the elements you feel like that a great cocktail or mocktail needs, whether it's flavor wise, or what are some of those components you feel like?
It should not be sweet. I don't make sweet drinks, so that's the first thing, and that's what's such a disappointment to me. When I spoke at the Cannabis Drinks Expo, the 2 times that I spoke there, the first time I got up and I said, cannabis drinks suck, and they do. And the second time I got up and I said, cannabis drinks suck, but not quite as badly as they used to. They didn't ask me back this year. No, they did, but I'm going back as an observer, not as a.
You can't be on here bashing the category anymore.
No, you've been a bad boy, and you got your beverage, and it's not sweet. No, it's not sweet at all. But it's tangy, and I think that's really important. So you should have a sweet element, you should have a bitter element, and you should have a tangy element, and they balance together like really good soup. And as a saucier, I'll tell you that everything doesn't go into the pot and then puree it and hope that you have something. That is a technique, but not for making sauces. And so I use those same kind of techniques for building Klaus, and each of the SKUs, and there's going to be 3 SKUs before long, and I'm working on the other 2 right now. But each of the SKUs are unique, and they have a clarity of ingredients and a clarity of flavor. And the cannabis element is seasonal. So certain nano emulsions are only available at certain times. And that gives my beverage a certain seasonality. And I like that. I love that seasonality, that craft element, that I'm not making 25 million cans and wonder if they all are going to taste as uniform. I know that mine are going to taste uniform, but I'm happy not to make 25 million cans. I'm happy to make a batch. We're doing batches of 5,000, and I think that's really marvelous. I worked in craft spirits for all the years that I worked in in the liquor industry, and I would never have it any other way. I wasn't working with, William Grant or Diageo or any of the big players. I was working with, companies that were coming out with, 2,500 bottles of spirits. That was a big run, and they were lucky if they could sell them. So I think it's kind of the same way. I feel very much a kinship to the wild people who would quit everything in my life. I lost my job, so I didn't have the choice. I had to do something. But with a lot of the people I come up against in the in the cannabis infused business or whatever, they're trust fund people. They've inherited money. They made money. They're entrepreneurs. They have wherewithal. I'm the one of the few people who doesn't have any of that. I wish I did, but I don't, and I just have to work harder so I can earn it myself. That's
just a boxer in the ring, still standing, man.
That's right. That's right.
So on the seasonality, right? Because people do seasonal flavors. So you're talking about the only seasonality will change with the nano emulsified cannabis that you're infusing. So to slightly give different, that terpene profile will slightly alter based on seasonality, correct?
I believe so. And I really don't know what the limitations are of Vertosa yet. I imagine that once they sell you an emulsion, they can continue making it until such time as they can't get it anymore, and then we would have to reformulate. Reformulation is not inexpensive, and that would be a problem. A drink as fine as the Mesrol needs to have the right strain to complement the other ingredients. And I need to go back a little bit. The reason why we called it the Mesrol, it was for a guy named Mesro, who during the jazz era was friends with a cat named Louis Armstrong. And yesterday was Louis Armstrong's unofficial birthday, July 4th. And Mez was a guy who, white guy, Jewish guy, who brought a bunch of weed up from Mexico and sold it in Harlem and in Chicago, south side of Chicago, which was the center of jazz music in the jazz era. And he made a lot of money and made a lot of friends. And one of the people that Mez hung out with, of course, was Louis Armstrong. And that's where Louis got his stuff, because he was a smoker, not a drinker. Something you should know. So yesterday I went to the Flushing Cemetery and visited Louis' grave and brought my little JBL speaker and played his music from WKCR.org. And they have 30 some odd hours of Louis Armstrong. And, Louis is a smoker. So I spent a little bit of time smoking some weed and listening to some music and paying homage to Louis.
Oh, that is amazing. That's a great way to infuse that name around some history.
That's right.
In the cannabis space.
So there's just one deeper thing. So a Mesrol was a slang name for a well-rolled cannabis cigarette. You might not call it a reefer or a joint, because even though at that time cannabis wasn't illegal yet, still it was frowned upon by the police. So you probably wouldn't want to be asking for a reefer or a joint. That was the key. But a well-rolled joint in the slang was a Mesrol, and if it was something like something really fine, the Mesrol was the slang name for it. So I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. That's definitely a lot of creative elements went into that name. And then the name, the brand name Klaus itself, you have Klaus. We need to get a little bit of the history of Klaus, man.
Klaus came to me in the early 1990s when I just started working in the liquor industry, from a friend of mine named Heather, who had the entire collection of gnomes in her family for, I think she said, almost 100 years. And when I started working in liquor, she said that he wanted to be, famous someday. And he became famous before I did. The things that he's seen, I have no idea, but I think you'd probably run for the doors.
He's traveled the world with me.
He has. He's been all over the world with me. He's been held by presidents and kings and bad people and good people and gas station operators and hospital workers and guards at the border took him from me in France, and they x-rayed him even though he's hollow and terracotta, and they had guns on me because they thought I was smuggling drugs in him. true story. And in Russia, they examined him extra hard, and all the things that went on there. And I don't know, in Switzerland, they examined him. Everyone's examined him. They love him. They love him, and they don't know what to do with a grown guy, traveling with no. But I do.
But
that's what makes me happy. And if anyone doesn't like it, they can find other friends, because I'm happy with who I am, and he makes me happy inside. And if that isn't good enough for anyone, they can just go away. Leave me alone.
I love the energy, and it's amazing that you've had that. And that was one of the I think when I saw you at the last Hall of Flowers, when we were walking the floor, you had shared some of those stories and some of the places you'd been, and I remember being in awe of, like, man, you've really taken the gnome with you everywhere across the globe.
Oh, everywhere. And when I worked in the food business, he came with me. I would go to like the fancy food show in New York City, and all these people, from all over the world. I'd take pictures of Klaus and I, or Klaus and them together. And then I started getting invitations, and I got an invitation to go to France to cover the Fête Gastronomique, which I wrote about for, I think, Foodista, or one of the blogs. And I brought Klaus with me, and he went, we went to Burgundy, and we went to Dijon, and we ate and we drank, and he had a great time. And, he didn't want to leave. So when we were about 2 years ago, he and I went to Berlin together, and I went to speak at the Berlin Bar Convent on cannabis and beverages, and he didn't want to leave, and he had an accident and he broke. And he got repaired.
Mm-hmm.
To say he got repaired. Yes, an archaeologist repaired him. It was almost a disaster. So he knew he was going to be famous after that, and the beverage got named for him. So there it is.
That's when you wanted to start the beverage. Was there any other name in contention, or was it just that immediately?
There was just that. It was Klaus. It's Klaus. He's he's on the can. I don't know. You can see him. He's right. Right
okay,
there.
yeah. I think I remember.
He's on the can. He's on the website, drinkklaus.com, and then our Instagram at drinkklaus, which is just so much fun. It's always changing. John keeps it really fresh, and it's just a great storytelling thing. I worked in television in New York City years ago, and it's not even on my resume anymore. So long ago, it's like I was like 16 to 18 years old. And I learned how to tell stories visually through making TV commercials. And it was when you start looking at Instagram and the reels that are on Facebook, you start realizing that my degree in from Emerson College, my film degree, wasn't so far off the mark, and I may not have actually used what I learned in film school to any benefit to me in my pocket. But that doesn't mean that I can't use the classes that I took to make the images that we're trying to achieve, more vibrant. But one of my favorite teachers from school, a guy named Jack Gantos, I still keep in contact with, and he was my creative writing professor. And I wouldn't say that he forced me to write cannabis cocktails, mocktails, and tonics, but it didn't hurt having someone tell me that maybe I should consider a career being a writer. And it only took me another 40 years before I did it. So.
Well, what is, and across your journey, I think a lot of people that have found their way to cannabis, being that it's so new, it's hard to say, right? I was professionally a part of cannabis before. We could say we were part of the legacy market,
I sold
whatever.
Weed in college. I mean, come on. I sold weed.
But it's, being that as an industry, right? Like, we have to take our experience with cannabis, but also from these other parts. And so while you've had these other careers, how do you feel about how all of these things and experiences align into cannabis, and feel like when cannabis finally became an industry where you're like, this is it, this is my calling, this is where I need to be, and it kind of has these tangents and relations to all these past experiences?
That's a really tough question. But I think a lot of it comes back to, and continues to come back to, the Grateful Dead. I may not always listen to the Grateful Dead every day, but every day I'm somehow touched by the time and effort that I put into following them around and seeing the almost 300 or so shows that I saw. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a deadhead, but I think what it means is it's a further calling. We experimented a lot with psychedelics. I can't say I haven't been experimenting still. I still enjoy my mushrooms and much to the chagrin of others, but some appreciate that as well, and that's okay. But I just think there's a universal dialogue that we have with cannabis, and we're really fortunate that I can travel without it, but always find it.
Mm.
And that's what I try to do for people, my friends. They can always rest assured they can travel without it, but if they have my phone number, I probably have something for them. So they don't have to worry about that. I call that the cannabis rainbow, or other people sometimes call it like the horseshoe. And the horseshoe is upside down. When it's like a U, it's catching the abundance. When it's the other way, things just like fly off of it, like bad reviews for my books or something. So you just let it fly off your back. But I like the idea of the horseshoe being shaped like a U, because it fills with abundance. And if I can help those who come my way who don't have, I'd be a happier man. And I am.
That's amazing. Having worked in the alcohol space, there's so much of these relations or metaphors where people say cannabis industry is like the alcohol industry, or the cannabis industry is not like the alcohol industry.
No, it's not.
What are some of those ways that make it different in your opinion?
It's not because we're not hungover every day. That's the first thing. People don't drop dead at work. Hopefully, the dabbing thing concerns me a little bit, but that's just because I remember Richard Pryor and with freebasing. So that kind of I don't dab. Dabbing makes me throw up. So that's a pretty immediate reaction to it. I'm a flower guy. I like I love the stuff that I have from like Astor Farms. I just love it. It just outdoor grow. I mean, what's so difficult about that? That's the way I was raised. I was raised on outdoor grown cannabis. I've always loved outdoor grown cannabis. I love the stuff from Northern Cal. I love, Oregon. I love Maine. I love Massachusetts. The Western Massachusetts is growing stuff that you wouldn't believe. The terroir there is really exceptional. And I'm just astonished what a guy named ChemDog, is doing out in Western Massachusetts. It's gas. It's just pure gas. I can't get over it. It's not sweet. Thank God it's not sweet. Everything's so sweet. I mean, I go over to California and it's great stuff, but it's also sweet. It's like a fruit salad.
Yeah.
And then, I was surprised this year in Palm Springs. A lot of the stuff that I was trying was, had a certain bitterness to it. And I really enjoyed that. There was a lot of creativeness. It just wasn't candy. But the stuff that's aimed at the 21 and up crowd is pretty sweet. They're adding terpenes that are sweet to it, and I don't necessarily say it's good, and I don't say it's bad. I just don't choose to smoke that.
And so that's interesting. Whether it's beverage or cannabis, that terpene preference for you follows suit, where you don't.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, very much so. But as I said, with the drinks that I make, you'd be hard pressed to find anything that's sweet. So there are a couple things that sort of teeter on the edge. But I knew that I wasn't going to do something in the beverage space that was not challenging. I had to do something that challenged your palate and your intellect. And if you didn't like it, I wanted you to tell me why you didn't like it. And I knew, as I said earlier, I would make it better the next time, because my ambition in life is to ruin you for your bartender. And if I do that, I've done my job. And it's the best. It's the best feeling I can give you, because it shows that I've succeeded at something in life. I didn't have that growing up. My dad was manipulative and destructive, and my mom was with her horses all the time. So I didn't have the family, unit. And the only time I saw them was when we went to travel in Europe, which would be 1 or 2 months of extreme deep dives into culture, into food, and into wine, and everything else that goes along with, being raised like I was. But I will tell you that when all of it ended, it was a stark reality of how hard you really need to work to achieve something in this life. And I'm prepared to do it. And I've been doing it all along, and I only anticipate doing better.
Man, I love it. It's all about refinement, getting better. I mean, that's the thing, whether you're, chef, mixologist, growing cannabis, it's all about how can we make this better? How can we take the last batch? It might take, sometimes some of those regards, it might take a couple batches to surpass the one that you made one time, right?
Sure. No, but we did it right the first time.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be perfect. I mean, I don't want to brag. I mean, I have a gift. As I said, I have a gift, and I I wanted to exemplify that gift by sharing it with as many people as possible. And right now, I believe we have the best tasting drink on the market. Unfortunately, we have the best tasting drink on the market that no one can buy. So we hope to work through those difficulties, and hopefully by the time this airs, we'll have worked through that and be back in the running. As I said earlier, I don't want to be, or maybe I didn't say it, but I don't want to be in every single dispensary in California. I want to be in the right dispensaries in California. And the other thing I want to be doing is the DTC piece, so the direct to consumer, the ginger piece, because that takes the distribution thing right off of my hands and lets them deal with that rather than me having to go around in circles figuring out someone who likes me. I know they like me and I know they like the beverage. I just have to have someone who can go around and do it and make that happen. I'm the sales guy. I open up the doors. They have to get it there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And to co-sign, it's one of the best beverages I've had in cannabis. Personally, I'll be on air and say that. I'm not into the, much like you, I'm not into the sweets. When I had it the first time, I was like, this is so refreshing that it tastes good. It's got so many elements that you would want, that I get that people want from carbonated or sweet beverages. It's got those elements, but it doesn't taste that. And then even still knowing the sugar count, now being a father of a young child, I'm starting to make correlations with sugar in a way that I didn't in the past.
And the type of sugar that's being used. I mean, this is pure cane sugar, which I think is really important. I wanted to use Demerara, which has that funk to it, but that was not available to me in the amounts that I needed. And then it would have changed the entire balance of the ginger, because the ginger is the element that has the cane built into it. Anyway, so that it's a ginger concentrate that you use in bartending, and it makes what we call a ginger beer syrup, but there's no alcohol. It's just the technique. Anyway, so I think it's really, really important to use the best ingredients at your disposal. And I've always been taught to use fresh juices whenever possible. And that's why the lime element was so important in the beverage, because it's a true puree of these little tiny Caribbean limes, which are extraordinary. I mean, they taste like no other lime, maybe a key lime, but you'd pay $2 a piece. You'd never be able to afford to do it. So it was a struggle and a search, and ingredients are really important to me. And, being a chef didn't hurt, and knowing what goes into that pot of soup, it's all in the ingredients, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of love. In New Orleans, we always called it lagniappe. And that was that sweet coating on the back of the spoon, a little bit of extra, a little bit of something extra. And I think that Klaus offers that, that little bit of something extra, because that little bit of something extra is the experience that you have that gives you a wonderful feeling inside. It's talkative, it's communicative, and you have that great night's sleep, that night, because it's a indica leaning hybrid. So it has good conversation ingredients, and makes you nice and relaxed. And
that's the goal, right? When we're taking cannabis, at least me personally, I'm trying to relax.
We're a cocktail. We're a cocktail.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't want to relax.
You're chill.
Yeah. I'm not trying to get amped up, man.
Well, you could, we all could have Uncle Arnie's, and we love Uncle Arnie. We love it. We love it. Everyone should have an Arnold Palmer that's 100 milligrams. I think that everyone deserves to have 100 milligram. And if you haven't had Matt on your show, you really should.
I haven't had him on here, but I am a fan of their product, because, like I said, I'm not a soda drinker, but I do like an occasional lemonade, and I do like the occasional Arnold Palmer.
It's if I wish, I wish I had the foresight to do that kind of work, because I would do a Long Island iced tea without the alcohol. But anyway, an Arnold Palmer's is brilliant, and that's why the Mesrol is so brilliant, because if you can make an Arnold Palmer, you can make a tea punch that doesn't have rum in it. It has THC, and there you have it. Or a spicy ginger daiquiri. Everyone's had a daiquiri. A spicy ginger daiquiri is just one little dog leg to the left, and then putting weed in it. Amazing.
And with the Mesrol too. Obviously, you had a book you previously made of 75 different cocktails. What went into thinking that the Mesrol would be the first beverage under Klaus?
It really wasn't up to me. Because I formulated that. Actually, the first formulation I did was with Matt from when he was at Space Station, and that was just the one that we seemed to, that we could get the ingredients pretty easily. And when we first started formulating for the drink, and we did it with notes written on the back of a piece of paper. I mean, it was pretty rough stuff. I mean, I had the lime puree, I had the ginger, but I didn't really have the vinegar yet, and I was worried it was going to be too low of pH or too high of pH. Instead, you want to have low pH, high acidity, and it didn't have any acidity at all. It just sucked. It wasn't there yet. So it took another year and another several formulations until I came to the realization that I was going to use something from one of my books, and that was the mirin. And I wrote a book called Bitters and Shrub Syrup Cocktails, so I have a lot of experience with fermented beverages and switchels and shrubs and things, kombuchas and things of that nature. But I didn't really want to do a fermented beverage. I wanted to do a beverage that had a certain tangy quality to it that really kind of perked up your appetite and made you hungry and thirsty at the same time. And why that happens is the same reason why people put vinegar into their diet. A teaspoon of Bragg's vinegar before you go to bed helps you digest your meal. I can't tell you that Klaus is going to help you digest your meal, but what I can tell you is that vinegar element is going to perk up your appetite, because you take some people drink Amaros at the end of the meal, but they also have an aperitif like a Negroni or Campari or whatever to stimulate the stomach juices to make you hungry. Well, at the end of the meal, it's the same thing. You would have an Amarone or wine or a something digestive to settle your stomach, and the vinegar does the same thing. It settles your stomach with that little bit of vinegar element. And as I said, it's not a whole lot. It's well in balance. It doesn't really taste vinegary, but it gives you a certain sparkling feeling that it's tangy. And it works so well with the ginger in it. One of the techniques that I use in craft cocktails is adding a pinch of kosher salt or sea salt to the end of a cocktail, when you're making a cocktail, to bring all the flavors into balance. And that's a great technique. But I didn't want to put sea salt into the drink because I thought that it would probably float to the bottom and it would be lost. So I wanted to use something, and the goal was to use something that wasn't salty. The goal was to use something that was tangy, and vinegar was the perfect element. But there's 1,001 different types of vinegar out on the market, so it had to be the right vinegar, and the mirin was the right vinegar because it tastes great with cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do all the R&D, so I didn't try all the different flavors, but I know that candy got in your hand. I know I tried that, and I know
did.
it tasted right.
Knowing about food and knowing about ingredients, and I've always loved Asian food, and being that I was in California, I had to do something that was pan-Asian because I wanted to create a beverage that was good with the types of food that I love, and that's Thai food and Vietnamese food and Mexican food and anything that has lime in it. When you squeeze lime over a bowl of pho, that just enlivens all the ingredients, that Chinese 5-spice powder, and the long cooked bones, and the fat and the grease and everything else that makes that delicious. It tastes even better when you have a Klaus, a Meserol with you because of that ginger, lime, vinegar element works really well with Asian cooking. And also, like tacos. I love it when you squeeze a lime over carnitas, in your taco, and have a Klaus with that. This is a perfect combination of flavors.
You're getting me hungry right now, Warren.
That's what I'm supposed to do, eh?
What all you got on the agenda for the rest of 2022 with Klaus?
Klaus is looking for a distributor. Hopefully, we've got that handled. As I said, by the time you air this, I'm going to be going to Cannabis Drinks Expo and making introducing myself around. Klaus will be with me. We're going to have a good time. I'll be in San Francisco from the 27th until the 31st of July. Going forward, gosh, I don't know. I mean, we're going to try to release the Meserol in New York State. It looks like we're going to do a terpene forward, no THC version. We've formulated for it. I believe we're looking for a canner right now in New York to put it together, but the emulsion can be shipped across state lines because it doesn't have THC. So we've got that taken care of, and we have all the other ingredients. So why not? I want to go to be in like Whole Foods.
Yeah.
I want to be all over the country, man. I mean, come on. I've struggled with my life. I've gone through it all. If anyone has failed as many times as I have, I want to meet them so I can tell them I failed one more time than they have.
Oh man, I love it, and I want to see it. I think it fits right at home. A non-cannabis version fits in a store like Whole Foods. Cannabis version
that's scary though, because my identity is weed. I didn't want to make it like CBD. That's crazy. I hate. I don't want to say I hate CBD because I almost said it, but really, if things that are sold at like gas stations in New Jersey, I really have a difficulty with. So it's snake oil. You're trying to cure cancer. You can't do that. You just can't do that. That's not allowed. And I don't care if it's the FDA or the FTC or whatever. We have to pass a lot of hurdles to put a cannabis beverage out on the market. And it's unfair that companies can take famous people's faces like Clint Eastwood and put it on their CBD, and he just won the big lawsuit that took his name off his picture off of the CBD container. And I think that's really telling. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do and a lot of things we can't. Why try to make life more difficult? It's already difficult enough. We already have enough controversy, and we have to go through enough hoops to come out with a beverage which is incredibly pure and incredibly delicious and incredibly different, and has my name on it. See, I think it has my signature someplace in there. Yeah, well, see, there's the Mesrol. I know it has my signature somewhere, but yeah, there it is. But I put my signature on it, and that means something to me.
Yep.
When I used to live in Charleston, they in South Carolina, they said you seal a deal with a handshake, and I believe that. And I sealed a deal with my signature on the can. So there you go.
Man, I love it. I love it.
As good as I know how to make it.
Well, I love it. I'm looking forward to the next time I can taste it.
Thank you.
Most certainly appreciate you also taking the time out to get on here as well, Warren. Anyone that wants more information, drink Klaus, KLAUS.com.
Yes, 2 Ks, DRINKKLAUS.com, or just drinkklaus.com or drink Klaus on Instagram. I recommend going to the Instagram site. It's a lot more fun.
The IG updating content pretty frequently. Well, I appreciate you being on here, Warren. This is the RMR Podcast, episode 44. We'll be back. I think I got 1 or 2 more episodes this week, actually. So we'll be back with a couple more episodes before we kick off the North American Weed Tour next week.